Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, cognitive subconscious patterns, audio, visual, and kinesthetic. Some individuals process the world through color, beauty, and aesthetics, visually attuned to what pleases or disrupts their sense of harmony. Others perceive primarily through sound, tuning into music, rhythm, tone, or spoken word. And some are guided by feeling, sensuality, touch, emotional texture, or bodily instinct. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, known for its charm, creativity, and magnetic allure, often blends all three with an emphasis on pleasure, connection, and self-expression. Their subconscious filters are artistic and relational. They process not just for clarity, but for meaning, beauty, and emotional reward. Which style dominates depends on planetary placements that shape how they internalize attention, desire, and sensory information. If Venus is in the first house in Perva Phalguni, the processing style is primarily visual. These individuals are highly attuned to aesthetics, body language, and visual cues in their surroundings. They naturally scan for symmetry, style, and sensuality, both in people and in environment. Their memories are often stored as visual impressions, how something looked, the vibe of a moment, or how beauty was expressed. If Venus is in the seventh house, this visual intelligence turns relational. They're keenly aware of how others look at them, how attraction is exchanged, and how appearances convey emotion or interest. If Mercury is in the third house, the native leans toward auditory processing. These individuals think and remember in dialogue. They replay conversations, notice inflection, and catch double meanings with ease. Their minds are musically inclined, drawn to melody, speech rhythm, and flirtatious banter. They may excel in vocal performance, persuasive speech, or language-based charm. If Mercury is in the 10th, this auditory orientation becomes public. They use tone, timing, and voice to captivate an audience or control a room, often instinctively aware of how they sound before considering what they mean. If Moon is in the 4th house, kinesthetic processing becomes dominant. These individuals absorb experience through emotional and physical sensation, how it felt to be held, desired, or comforted. They are guided by internal cues of safety, warmth, and bodily pleasure. Learning and memory are tied to feelings, the atmosphere of a space, the texture of a moment, or the emotional aftertaste of an encounter. If Moon is in the 10th house, this kinesthetic awareness turns outward. They intuitively sense the emotional flow of social or professional dynamics, using comfort or sensual presence to influence or soothe. If Rahu is in the first house, processing leans toward a heightened, sometimes surreal visual style. These natives are captivated by appearance, fantasy, and visual idealism. Their subconscious is filled with symbols, archetypes, and scenes replayed through imagination and desire. If Rahu is in the 7th, this visual focus becomes relational. They obsess over how others look, how attraction operates visually, and how image influences connection or power. They often use gaze, styling, or aesthetic persona as a tool of persuasion or seduction. Purva Phalguni's subconscious filters are infused with sensuality and self-awareness. Whether they process through what they see, hear, or feel, their style is inherently performative, absorbing information in a way that feeds their creative and relational expression. They don't just learn for knowledge, they learn to connect, impress, or enchant. When refined, this multisensory cognition becomes a wellspring of artistic depth, intimacy, and magnetic influence. For Purva Phalguni, the act of perception itself is a form of seduction. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, motivation direction, towards versus away from. Some people are driven by the pleasure of creation, the pursuit of beauty, and the joy of connection, moving toward experiences that inspire, attract, or validate their sense of self. Others are motivated by the desire to preserve comfort, avoid rejection, or escape emotional discontent, acting away from discomfort, disapproval, or emotional vulnerability. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, with its blend of charm, sensual magnetism, and creative fire, naturally leans toward, drawn to experiences that offer love, attention, and aesthetic fulfillment. However, when faced with rejection, loss of admiration, or emotional disillusionment, they may shift into an away-from pattern, retreating to avoid discomfort or the fading of joy. Whether they lead with desire or defense depends on planetary placements, especially in expressive or relational houses like the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. If Venus is in the 1st house in Purva Phalguni, the motivation is strongly toward These natives move toward pleasure, beauty, connection, and self-expression. They are driven by attraction, what looks good, feels good, or enhances their presence. Their goals often revolve around love, style, romance, or being desired. If Venus is in the seventh, this forward drive becomes partnership-oriented. They are drawn toward romantic and social relationships that offer validation and harmony. Their desire is not just to love, but to be adored. If Moon is in the fourth house, the motivation shifts toward away from, particularly in emotional matters. These individuals may act to avoid emotional disruption or domestic instability, retreating from anything that threatens their inner peace. Their decisions are influenced by a need for emotional safety, and they may withdraw from conflict, criticism, or environments that feel too exposed. If Moon is in the 10th house, this protective instinct turns public. They may seek professional success or recognition not only for growth, but to insulate themselves from judgment or emotional vulnerability in visible roles. If Mars is in the first house, motivation is intensely toward. These individuals are passionate, bold, and assertive, driven to pursue what they want with vigor, especially in matters of desire or performance. They move toward challenge, attraction, or conquest, often seeing life as something to be actively shaped. If Mars is in the 10th, this motivation becomes ambitious. They're drawn to succeed, compete, and rise, often with flair, but they may also push forward to avoid stagnation, failure, or being overlooked. If Saturn is in the fourth house, the motivation is deeply away from. These natives often carry emotional memories of restriction or vulnerability and act to avoid repeating them. They seek control over their private world, and their caution often arises from not wanting to feel what they once did. If Saturn is in the 10th, this becomes structured. They pursue status, responsibility, or social roles a buffer against inadequacy, criticism, or instability. Their ambition often hides a fear of emotional exposure or lack of worth. Purva Phalguni's default motivation is radiant, magnetic, and forward-moving. They are drawn toward what seduces, excites, or elevates. But beneath that glow is often a quiet sensitivity to loss, rejection, or the absence of joy. When aligned, they move toward what they love with openness and authenticity. When wounded, they retreat away from what threatens their sense of beauty, worth, or connection. Their evolution begins when they ask, "Am I chasing joy or avoiding pain?" From there, they learn to move with conscious desire, not unconscious defense. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, attention direction, self or others. Some people are oriented inward, constantly checking in with how they feel, what they want, and how they're expressing themselves. Others focus outward, tracking connection, approval, beauty, and the subtle rhythms of relational dynamics. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and marked by charisma, sensuality, and artistic grace, often leans toward others. These natives naturally scan for connection, attraction, and emotional feedback. Yet beneath the surface, there's also a self-focused awareness, concerned with personal appeal, comfort, and being authentically desired. Whether their attention defaults to self or others depends on planetary placements, particularly in relational and identity-shaping houses like the 1st, 7th, and 4th, 10th. If Venus is in the first house in Perva Falguni, attention is on the self, especially around beauty, desire, and personal presence. These individuals are attuned to how they look, feel, and come across. They seek harmony within themselves and often shape their external world to match their internal sense of grace and pleasure. If Venus is in the 7th house, attention shifts to others. They become highly tuned into romantic or social dynamics, always sensing how others perceive them. Their self-worth becomes relational, often tied to being wanted or admired. If Moon is in the 1st house, attention is emotionally self-focused. These natives track their feelings, moods, and comfort levels closely. They may retreat when overwhelmed and are sensitive to how their emotional needs are or aren't being met. If Moon is in the 7th house, that emotional attention extends outward. They feel others' emotions intensely, often absorbing their partner's moods or adjusting themselves to maintain relational harmony. Their well-being can hinge on the emotional tone of their connections. If Mercury is in the 1st house, attention is on the inner dialogue. These individuals are mentally self-reflective, often running internal scripts about how they're perceived, how to express themselves, and how to stay clever or likable. If Mercury is in the seventh, the attention becomes socially strategic. They focus on what others say, how to respond, and how to maintain charm or conversational balance. Their mind becomes a mirror for social dynamics. If Rahu is in the first house, the attention is self-absorbed, but often insecure. These natives are hyper-aware of their appearance, desirability, and presence, frequently trying to perfect or elevate how they're seen. This focus can lead to seductive confidence or identity confusion. If Rahu is in the seventh house, obsession moves to others. They fixate on attracting, impressing, or winning over people, often seeking validation through relationships while losing touch with their own center. If Saturn is in the fourth house, attention turns inward in a guarded way. These individuals often monitor their inner emotional world with caution, seeking to stabilize or control vulnerable feelings. They may struggle to relax, even in private, due to a deep awareness of internal responsibilities. If Saturn is in the 10th, attention is projected outward. They are highly aware of public image, expectations, and how to maintain structure or success in the eyes of others. This can bring focus and ambition, but also pressure and self-censorship. Purva Phalguni's attention tends to sway toward others, beauty, attraction, emotional chemistry, but is deeply colored by how the self is mirrored back. When healthy, they balance self-pleasure with connection, moving between self-awareness and social engagement with grace. When imbalanced, they may lose themselves in pleasing, performing, or being desired. Their growth comes from choosing when to look outward with intention and when to return inward with truth. Learning that true magnetism begins with inner alignment. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, understanding chunk size. Big or little. Some people understand life through sweeping ideas, seeing the whole picture in terms of beauty, symbolism, or emotional rhythm. Others prefer to take things step by step, processing in smaller, tangible pieces that feel grounded and manageable. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, with its Venusian creativity, relational magnetism, and desire for harmony, often leans toward big chunk processing. These natives are drawn to overarching experiences: love, art, meaning, pleasure, and connection. But beneath that elegant surface, they still crave emotional clarity, sometimes breaking things down when the big picture starts to feel too abstract or emotionally unstable. Whether they favor macro or micro cognitive processing depends heavily on planetary placements, especially in the first, fifth, and ninth houses, where creativity meets cognition. If Venus is in the first house in Perva Falguni, the native tends toward big chunk processing. They absorb life as an experience, seeking beauty, pleasure, and attraction in broad strokes. They don't need to analyze every detail to know whether something feels right. They simply sense harmony or disharmony. If Venus is in the ninth house, this pattern magnifies. They process through symbolism, cultural meaning, and aesthetic philosophies, often aligning themselves with ideals and visions that resonate on a soul level. If Mercury is in the fifth house, the processing leans more toward little chunks, particularly in communication and creativity. These individuals may write, plan, or express through structure, crafting beauty or emotional experience one piece at a time. They enjoy storytelling, design, and detail, and may need clear steps to access their creative flow. If Mercury is in the ninth, the scope broadens. They begin to mix structure with meaning, expressing bigger truths through refined, carefully shaped language or performance. If Moon is in the first house, the emotional cognition is big picture at first. They instinctively respond to moods, energy, and emotional tone. But they may later revisit their feelings in small pieces, trying to understand what felt right, what didn't, and why. If Moon is in the fifth house, the little chunk style strengthens. They emotionally process experiences through memory, pattern, and creative repetition, often revisiting stories or moments in order to understand them from all sides. If Jupiter is in the first house, big chunk processing dominates. These individuals see meaning in large arcs, relationships as life lessons, beauty as spiritual, desire as a form of growth. They don't get lost in details. They trust in the larger pattern. If Jupiter is in the ninth, this becomes even more philosophical. They absorb ideologies, spiritual truths, and romantic ideals all at once, internalizing broad narratives that inspire and guide their journey. If Ketu is in the fifth house, understanding becomes nonlinear and symbolic. These individuals don't always follow structured learning. They intuit or feel knowledge through subtle cues, dreams, or aesthetic impressions. Their processing may seem fragmented, but they often grasp emotional or creative truths in a way that transcends logic. If Ketu is in the first house, understanding becomes abstract, detached, or dreamlike. They perceive life through archetypes, cosmic stories, or intuitive flashes, rather than through steps or structure. Purva Phalguni generally prefers to understand life in wide brushstrokes, what feels beautiful, loving, aligned, or off-center. But under pressure or confusion, they may temporarily shift to smaller chunk processing to restore clarity. Their evolution lies in honoring the full emotional or artistic experience, while also learning to trace its steps when needed. For them, understanding isn't just intellectual. It's sensual, aesthetic, and relational, and when harmonized, it becomes both a pleasure and a profound path to truth. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, frame of reference, internal or external. Some people rely on personal instinct, emotion, and inner resonance to decide what's right, while others look outward, seeking approval, structure, or collective agreement to guide their choices. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and imbued with grace, desire, and performative charm, tends to walk the line between both. At its core, it craves harmony, internally and relationally. While many natives lean toward an internal reference point when it comes to pleasure, identity, or aesthetic choice, they are also sensitive to how others perceive them. Whether they default to inner truth or outer reflection often depends on planetary placements, especially in the 4th and 10th houses, where emotional confidence and social role are tested. If Venus is in the 1st house in Purva Phalguni, the frame of reference is primarily internal. These individuals are attuned to what feels good, what looks beautiful, and what emotionally aligns with their sense of self. They rarely need others to tell them what they like. They instinctively know. Decisions come from aesthetic intuition and emotional ease, not external approval. If Venus is in the 10th house, however, that reference point becomes more externally shaped. These natives may begin to value public perception, status, or social desirability more heavily, making choices based on how they'll be received or admired rather than how they genuinely feel. If Moon is in the 4th house, emotional decisions are deeply internalized. These individuals listen to their inner rhythm, seeking emotional safety and comfort before acting. Their world is filtered through feelings, and external validation rarely overrides their emotional barometer. If Moon is in the 10th, however, emotional awareness turns outward. They begin to consider how their feelings will be seen, whether their vulnerability is safe in public, and how their emotional state affects their role or image. If Mercury is in the 4th house, the native's cognition is internally referenced. Their thoughts are self-reflective, looping through memory, emotion, and private musings. They often need space and solitude to think clearly, relying on their own reasoning. If Mercury is in the 10th, thinking becomes externally influenced. They may tailor communication to suit social roles, and their clarity often depends on audience, feedback, or reputation. What others think begins to color how they process and decide. If Saturn is in the 4th house, the internal reference is strong but heavily guarded. These individuals take their time building inner trust, often relying on personal responsibility, discipline, and emotional control rather than external direction. They don't shift easily. If Saturn is in the 10th, the reference shifts to external metrics, titles, duties, and achievements. They begin to define themselves through accomplishment and obligation, measuring their value through societal roles more than emotional truth. If Jupiter is in the 4th house, the internal frame is spiritual, philosophical, and value-driven. These individuals seek to act in accordance with personal beliefs or inherited wisdom. Their sense of right is self-regulated. If Jupiter is in the 10th, that same moral compass becomes social. They seek to lead, teach, or inspire according to public ethics, often blurring where their inner beliefs end and external responsibility begins. Purva Phalguni naturally blends internal elegance with external awareness. While its aesthetic and emotional compass is strong, its desire to be seen, adored, and validated can sometimes draw it into performing rather than feeling. Its growth lies in trusting its inner resonance while resisting the temptation to be ruled by applause. When balanced, These natives become radiant examples of aligned expression, making choices that honor both self and setting without compromising the truth of either. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra. Action preference, proactive or reactive. Some people forge ahead, taking risks and shaping the world through sheer intent. Others move more fluidly, responding to emotional tone, relational dynamics, or creative timing. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and infused with sensuality, charm, and artistic magnetism, often leans toward a proactive style, but one that's playful, magnetic, and pleasure-driven rather than forceful. These natives tend to create through invitation, expression, and charm. Yet, when emotionally unsure or relationally off balance, they may shift into a more reactive mode, waiting for affirmation or retreating until the energy feels right. Their action orientation is deeply influenced by planetary placements, especially in the 3rd, 6th, and 10th houses, where creativity, conflict, and public performance are activated. If Venus is in the 1st house in Purva Phalguni, the action style is subtly proactive. These individuals initiate with attraction. They draw attention, create opportunities, and lead through presence. Their way of acting is less about doing and more about being, taking the first step by simply showing up in full radiance. If Venus is in the 6th house, this proactive drive becomes more service-oriented. They take initiative in creating harmony at work, managing interpersonal tensions, or elevating routines into rituals of beauty and balance. If Moon is in the 1st house, the action preference is reactive and emotionally tuned. These natives act when they feel emotionally moved, inspired, or safe. Their instincts are powerful, but they often wait to feel before doing. If Moon is in the 10th house, this reactivity becomes socially responsive. They move in reaction to audience, attention, or public emotion. Their behavior may shift based on how admired, accepted, or supported they feel in visible spaces. If Mars is in the 3rd house, the action style becomes distinctly proactive. These individuals pursue connection, conversation, and creative goals with confidence. Mars adds spark to their charm, encouraging them to take the lead in social and creative exchanges. If Mars is in the 10th house, the proactive drive becomes ambitious. They act to succeed, seduce, and shine in their public life, often combining Venusian grace with Martian determination to achieve their aims. If Saturn is in the 6th house, the action style turns more reactive, measured, and dutiful. These individuals may hesitate to act until they've weighed consequences, honored obligations, or ensured stability. Their style is one of restraint, but once they commit, they follow through with loyalty and grit. If Saturn is in the 10th, this reactive tendency becomes tied to social roles. They may respond to expectations, prestige, or long-term plans, taking action to fulfill legacy or maintain external structure, even if it means suppressing personal desire. Perva Phalguni's natural rhythm tends to act first when inspired, but wait when uncertain. Its proactive spark is softened by elegance, and its reactive instincts are masked by grace. Whether they initiate through desire or respond with tact, these natives shape life through presence, rhythm, and timing. Their evolution lies in learning when to create without needing approval, and when to pause without retreating from their power. For Purva Phalguni, action is a dance, and the magic lies in knowing when to lead and when to let life lead them. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, operational style, options versus procedures. Some individuals move through life with a love for exploration, preferring variety, spontaneity, and the freedom to shift direction. Others feel most empowered within structure, leaning on routines, checklists, and known methods to bring their vision to life. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, infused with Venusian creativity, charm, and pleasure-seeking ease, naturally leans toward an options-based style. These natives value freedom of expression, personal timing, and aesthetic autonomy. They like having choices, especially ones that align with their rhythm and allow for enjoyment and self-direction. However, planetary placements, especially in the 3rd, 6th, and 10th houses, can push them toward more structured, procedure-oriented modes, especially when stability or public image is at stake. If Venus is in the 3rd house, the operational style is strongly options-based. These individuals love to explore ideas, flirt with alternatives, and take creative detours. They resist routines that feel dull or overly technical. Their flow comes from spontaneity and inspiration. working best when they can follow what feels artistically or relationally right in the moment. If Venus is in the 10th, they still crave options, but navigate them more diplomatically. In public or professional settings, they use charm, negotiation, and aesthetic control to create flexible systems that still look polished and intentional. If Moon is in the 4th house, the inner world resists rigid structure. These natives may appear calm and habitual on the outside, but their operational style is deeply emotional and intuitive. They shift based on how things feel in the moment, needing emotional comfort and flow more than fixed methods. If Moon is in the 6th or 10th, they may adopt procedures to soothe anxiety or meet social expectations, but their default setting still leans toward emotionally adaptive rather than rule-bound. If Mercury is in the 3rd house, the operational style becomes mentally agile and options-oriented. These individuals think quickly, adjust on the fly, and are natural problem solvers, especially when it comes to creative communication or social coordination. If Mercury is in the 10th, this adaptability becomes a public strength. They may appear structured, but their real genius lies in their flexibility, storytelling, and ability to reframe problems without getting boxed into a fixed way of working. If Saturn is in the 6th house, the style becomes more procedural. These natives develop discipline through repetition and often find success in mastering structured systems. For Purva Phalguni, this can be a grounding influence, bringing needed stability to their otherwise free-flowing energy. If Saturn is in the 10th, the procedural preference becomes more pronounced. They operate professionally with precision, adhering to standards that earn respect and long-term recognition, even if internally they long for more creative room to move. If Rahu is in the 3rd or 6th house, the operational style becomes bold, unconventional, and deeply options-driven. These natives reject traditional systems, preferring to carve new paths and challenge norms. They operate best when allowed to innovate, seduce outcomes into alignment, or create workarounds that suit their unique rhythm. Structure, for them, is something to reshape, not follow. Purva Phalguni's operational brilliance lies in its graceful improvisation. They rarely thrive in rigid systems unless they've had a hand in beautifying or softening them. Even when they follow procedures, they do it with flair, bending the rules just enough to preserve their elegance and freedom. Their evolution lies in learning when structure enhances their artistry and when freedom is essential to their authenticity. Whether guided by pleasure or performance, they are most powerful when they operate like dancers, fluid, intentional, and completely in rhythm with their own style. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra views, general or specific. Some individuals navigate life through sweeping visions, seeking themes, beauty, symbolism, and resonance across experiences. Others operate with precision, tracking details, clarifying facts, and honing in on subtle differences that define clarity. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, with its Venusian grace, love for aesthetics, and natural affinity for connection and creativity, generally leans toward a general viewpoint. These natives are drawn to overall feel, emotional harmony, and the story as a whole, rather than getting caught in fine print. But depending on planetary placements, especially in the 1st, 5th, or 9th houses, they may shift between embracing broad conceptual thinking and diving into refined, detail-focused expression when their creative or relational identity demands it. If Venus is in the 1st house in Perva Falguni, the worldview is comfortably general. These individuals intuitively perceive patterns of beauty, emotional flow, and social dynamics. They tend to navigate life through vibe and impression rather than analysis, and they prefer to understand situations through relational context and emotional warmth rather than mental dissection. If Venus is in the 9th house, this generality is elevated. They may interpret life through myth, philosophy, or creative ideology, seeking meaning through narrative and aesthetic coherence rather than granular facts. If Mercury is in the 5th house, the view becomes more specific, especially in self-expression. These individuals focus on articulating their thoughts with precision, whether through writing, design, or performance. They're playful yet deliberate, paying attention to timing, structure, and technique. If Mercury is in the 9th, their specificity begins to merge with larger principles. They use their sharp mind to frame big ideas clearly, applying language and logic to concepts like ethics, culture, or artistic tradition. If Moon is in the fifth house, emotional perception is detail-oriented. These natives are sensitive to emotional micro-movements, intonation, timing, mood shifts, especially in romantic or creative contexts. They tend to store emotional experiences in memory with great specificity, replaying scenes or sensations with clarity. If Moon is in the ninth, their emotional view widens. They begin to interpret emotional experience through family myths, cultural memory, or spiritual frameworks, seeing feelings as part of larger emotional truths rather than individual episodes. If Jupiter is in the first house, the native leans into a general perspective. They see life as meaningful, connected, and expansive, interpreting events through a wide lens of wisdom, that's growth, or personal belief. Details are important only if they serve the larger picture. If Jupiter is in the ninth, this tendency amplifies. They may see themselves as storytellers, philosophers, or cultural visionaries, absorbing experience as a holistic pattern rather than a sequence of isolated parts. If K2 is in the fifth house, the view becomes symbolic and nonlinear. These individuals process through flashes of intuition, mystical images, or archetypal impressions. They may not be able to explain exactly how they know what they know, but their insights are emotionally and spiritually charged. If K2 is in the first, this abstract perception becomes part of their identity. They may come across as dreamy, disoriented, or lost in larger meanings, often resisting the need to pin things down with specific logic or language. Purva Phalguni naturally leans toward a general, fluid style of perception, seeking coherence, aesthetic flow, and emotional harmony. But when creativity calls for craft, or relationships require clarity, they can step into detail with intention and grace. Their evolution lies in knowing when to let beauty speak for itself and when to refine it with focus. When balanced, they offer both the story and the sentence, the feeling and the form, making art of life itself. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, work preferences, together, proximity, or solo. Some people thrive in creative partnerships, group synergy, and shared applause. Others prefer to work independently but within reach of collaboration when needed. And some require total solitude, needing freedom, silence, and personal rhythm to do their best work. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and known for its charm, creativity, and social magnetism, naturally leans toward a proximity work style. These natives enjoy being near others, especially in artistic, relational, or aesthetically attuned environments, but often prefer to express themselves independently within that space. They work best when given both admiration and autonomy. However, planetary placements, especially in the third, sixth, and 10th houses, can sway them toward more deeply collaborative or more private modes. If Venus is in the third house in Perva Falguni, the preference strongly leans toward proximity. These individuals love working in social or creative environments where ideas, flirtations, or aesthetics can be exchanged in easy flow. They may enjoy co-creating, brainstorming, or beautifying their immediate space, but still want room to express their personal flair. If Venus is in the 10th house, they may engage with group settings professionally, often in fashion, arts, performance, or social coordination, but still need the spotlight to shine on their individual contribution. If Moon is in the 4th house, the preference shifts more towards solo. These natives require emotional security and comfort in their workspace. They may enjoy the presence of others in theory, but their actual productivity peaks in privacy. Their creativity is nurtured in calm, safe, emotionally rich environments. If Moon is in the 10th house, they may step into leadership or public roles, but their work still requires emotional boundaries. They're best when they can retreat into their process, even while being seen. If Mercury is in the 3rd house, the style leans toward proximity with a communication edge. These individuals like bouncing ideas off others, quick chats, collaborative edits, or intellectually stimulating tasks. They're versatile and witty, working well in dynamic, media-driven, or expressive fields. If Mercury is in the 10th, their engagement becomes more public. They're likely to be speakers, writers, presenters, or strategists who seem highly social, but may still guard their core creative process privately. If Saturn is in the 6th house, the preference leans towards structured proximity or solo with boundaries. These individuals value systems, timelines, and defined tasks. They don't mind working with others, but only if roles are clear and emotional drama is minimal. If Saturn is in the 10th, they can thrive in traditional or hierarchical team environments, especially when they're given authority or space to lead with integrity and quiet strength. If Ketu is in the 3rd or 6th house, the work preference becomes quietly solo. These individuals are uninterested in group dynamics for their own sake. They often find noise, chatter, or constant interaction draining, preferring to work in silence, often on spiritual, creative, or hidden projects. Their strength lies in inner focus and detachment from performance pressure. They want beauty, not noise, depth, not distraction. Purva Phalguni thrives in environments that offer connection without confinement. These natives want to be admired, included, and inspired, but not micromanaged or emotionally crowded. Their best work emerges when they are surrounded by beauty, rhythm, and creative energy with enough breathing room to make it entirely their own. Whether dancing in a duet or shining solo on stage, they bring harmony, presence, and artistry on their terms and always in style. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra. Experience. Association versus dissociation. Some people live through the heart, immersed in beauty, connection, and emotional expression. Others experience life through a lens of distance, protecting themselves from pain or overexposure by detaching, observing, or performing. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and marked by its charm, sensuality, and flair for romance, generally begins with association. These natives thrive on intimacy, creativity, and shared emotional joy. But when relationships disappoint or admiration fades, they may shift into retreating into detachment, self-curation, or creative escapism. Whether they stay emotionally engaged or shift into distance depends on planetary placements, especially in the 4th, 5th, and 10th houses, where identity, expression, and public vulnerability are tested. If Moon is in the 4th house in Perva Falguni, the experience is deeply associated. These individuals absorb emotional tones from their environment, especially through relationships with family or romantic partners. They are emotionally expressive and nourished by closeness, comfort, and affection. Home, love, and beauty are experienced fully and often idealized. If Moon is in the 10th house, that association extends outward. They become emotionally tied to their public image, often needing appreciation or acknowledgement to feel safe. Their sense of self becomes entangled with how they're received by the world. If Mercury is in the 5th house, the experience leans toward mental dissociation. These individuals observe love, joy, and creative experiences from a cognitive lens. They may analyze their feelings instead of fully immersing in them, expressing affection with wit, charm, or flirtation, while internally maintaining emotional distance. If Mercury is in the 10th, this dissociation becomes a public asset. They maintain poise and grace, choosing their words with care. In emotionally charged spaces, they use intellect and humor to mask vulnerability, especially when in leadership or visible roles. If Saturn is in the 4th house, the dissociation becomes a form of emotional protection. These individuals may grow up equating vulnerability with disappointment, leading them to suppress emotional needs or keep their true feelings private. They prefer emotional restraint over exposure, even when craving love. If Saturn is in the 10th, this guarded detachment becomes professionalized. They may take on structured, responsible roles and become emotionally stoic in public, valuing control and respect over spontaneity or personal emotional expression. If Ketu is in the 5th house, the dissociation is karmic and unconscious. These individuals often feel disconnected from romantic excitement, pleasure, or creative joy, like they're moving through the motions without emotional saturation. Their processing is symbolic, spiritual, or reflective, but rarely grounded in active emotional participation. If Ketu is in the 1st house, this detachment becomes part of their identity. They may appear dreamy, aloof, or strangely removed from their own charisma, as if watching their charm rather than embodying it. Purva Phalguni's default is to associate, to feel, love, and perform with full-bodied grace. But when threatened, unseen, or emotionally disappointed, they dissociate, not out of indifference, but as a way of preserving their inner beauty and worth. Their journey lies in learning to stay connected even when love is imperfect, to feel deeply without needing validation, and to let joy be real, not just performed. When they do, Their emotional presence becomes as magnetic as their charm, rooted not just in appearance, but in truth. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra. Approach: matching versus mismatching. Some people naturally seek harmony, focusing on what aligns, what flows, and what reinforces connection. Others zero in on what's missing, what breaks the pattern, or what disrupts emotional or aesthetic continuity. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, with its Venusian elegance, creative drive, and desire for relational symmetry, leans strongly toward a matching mindset. These natives instinctively seek beauty, resonance, and emotional congruence in their environment. They want people, experiences, and expressions to feel right. However, when love is unmet, admiration fades, or harmony is broken, their instinct may flip into mismatching, sensing where pleasure is denied or where connection feels performative. Whether they stay attuned to what fits or begin scanning for dissonance depends largely on planetary placements, especially in the 3rd, 6th, and 10th houses, where expression, work, and validation are tested. If Venus is in the 3rd house, the approach is deeply matching, especially in communication. These individuals seek to connect through charm, mutual understanding, and shared beauty. They're quick to find common ground and soften conflict with aesthetics or affectionate language. If Venus is in the 10th house, this matching approach becomes polished and socially directed. They seek alignment in public image, professional roles, and how others perceive their contributions. They want the external world to reflect the inner desire for beauty, balance, and approval. If Moon is in the 4th house, the matching instinct is emotional and internal. These individuals crave emotional consistency and relational ease. They match to feel safe, seeking harmony in family dynamics, mood, or emotional atmosphere. If Moon is in the 7th or 10th, the need for matching expands outward. They become highly responsive to relational dynamics, often striving to keep the emotional environment smooth, even at the cost of personal truth. When emotional discord is sensed, their instinct may shift into subtle mismatching, not to rebel, but to restore emotional alignment. If Mercury is in the 3rd house, the mind favors matching through cleverness and rapport. These natives enjoy mental resonance, matching ideas, wit, and pace. They value intellectual harmony and may steer away from conflict unless pushed. If Mercury is in the 10th house, the matching instinct becomes professional. They adjust language, tone, and delivery to meet audience or status expectations. However, if under stress, this placement can shift into mismatching, critiquing what doesn't make sense or align with their internal aesthetic logic. If Saturn is in the 6th house, the approach becomes structured and mismatching tendencies emerge. These individuals may hold high standards, especially in work, health, or daily systems. They spot inefficiencies, imbalances, or flaws, and seek to refine rather than reject. If Saturn is in the 10th, this mismatching becomes part of their professional identity. They may become perfectionists, building careers around fixing what lacks integrity or polish. While effective, it can also lead to internal conflict if their desire for outer harmony clashes with inner rigidity. If Jupiter is in the 3rd house, matching is elevated by meaning and perspective. These individuals seek coherence in thought and dialogue, aiming to connect ideas to broader themes of truth and value. They'll still notice what's off, but aim to reframe rather than reject. If Jupiter is in the 9th or 10th, matching becomes philosophical. They want systems, values, and aesthetics to feel aligned both personally and publicly. In their ideal world, everything connects in purpose and beauty. Purva Phalguni's default is to match, not just for peace, but for pleasure, beauty, and belonging. Yet when discord arises, they can fall into mismatching to reclaim inner balance or aesthetic order. Their growth lies in learning when to let things almost match, when to accept imperfection without disconnecting, and when to hold the ideal without demanding it. When they balance their love of harmony with discernment, their vision becomes not just beautiful, but wise, inclusive, and deeply human. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, time experience, in time versus through time. Some people live in time, immersed in the moment, responding with emotion, instinct, and desire to what's unfolding right now. Others live through time, constantly aware of past patterns, future consequences, and the larger story in which they play a role. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra ruled by Venus and steeped in pleasure, connection, and performance, naturally leans in time. These natives are often most alive when the spotlight is on, the music is playing, or love is flowing. They thrive in present tense joy, sensuality, and relational exchange. But when faced with loss, aging, or disconnection, they may begin to reflect, slowly cultivating a through time awareness that reshapes their creativity, love, and legacy. Whether they stay immersed in now or evolve toward timeless reflection depends on planetary placements, especially along the first, seventh, and fourth, 10th axes. If Moon is in the first house in Purva Phalguni, the native is strongly in time. These individuals respond with immediacy to how they feel in the moment, making choices based on emotional highs, creative inspiration, or the need to be seen and adored. They are drawn to spontaneous expression and often follow their heart without waiting to assess the long-term arc. If Moon is in the seventh house, this emotional immediacy extends to relationships. They respond to connection, validation, and chemistry in real time, often making relational choices based on present emotional dynamics rather than future compatibility. If Saturn is in the fourth house, the native leans toward through time processing. These individuals internalize emotional discipline and caution early in life, learning to weigh comfort, belonging, and relational security across time. They may not rush into decisions. They reflect, assess, and move with guarded emotional commitment. If Saturn is in the 10th house, this long-range thinking becomes professionalized. They act with an awareness of public image, long-term success, and legacy. Every move is calculated not just for now, but for how it will look and feel down the line. If Rahu is in the first house, the experience becomes hyper in time. These natives crave excitement, impact, transformation. They want to be seen now, felt now, admired now. There's a hunger to experience life viscerally in the present, sometimes without considering consequence. If Rahu is in the seventh house, this urgency shifts to others. They may rush into relationships, become fixated on external feedback, or seek emotional fulfillment in the immediacy of attention, often overlooking long-term relational stability. If Jupiter is in the fourth house, the through-time experience is gentle, philosophical, and value-based. These individuals often live in connection to ancestry, emotional meaning, and spiritual continuity. They consider how their choices echo across generations or affect the emotional structure of their inner life. If Jupiter is in the 10th house, this orientation expands. They begin to live for legacy, for purpose, for what they're building not just for today, but for who they're becoming across time. Purva Phalguni's instinct is to revel in the now, to dance, to love, to create, to be adored in the present moment. But its power deepens when it learns to see time as art, when it moves not just for pleasure, but for permanence. Its evolution lies in blending the rapture of now with the wisdom of later, learning to cherish the moment without losing the thread of meaning that ties one moment to the next. When this happens, Purva Phalguni becomes not just a lover of life, but a designer of destiny. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, time experience, in time versus through time. Some people live in time, immersed in the moment, responding with emotion, instinct, and desire to what's unfolding right now. Others live through time, constantly aware of past patterns, future consequences, and the larger story in which they play a role. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and steeped in pleasure, connection, and performance, naturally leans in time. These natives are often most alive when the spotlight is on, the music is playing, or love is flowing. They thrive in present tense joy, sensuality, and relational exchange. But when faced with loss, aging, or disconnection, they may begin to reflect, slowly cultivating a through time awareness that reshapes their creativity, love, and legacy. Whether they stay immersed in now or evolve toward timeless reflection depends on planetary placements, especially along the first, seventh, and fourth, 10th axes. If Moon is in the first house in Perva Falguni, the native is strongly in time. These individuals respond with immediacy to how they feel in the moment, making choices based on emotional highs, creative inspiration, or the need to be seen and adored. They are drawn to spontaneous expression and often follow their heart without waiting to assess the long-term arc. If Moon is in the seventh house, this emotional immediacy extends to relationships. They respond to connection, validation, and chemistry in real time, often making relational choices based on present emotional dynamics rather than future compatibility. If Saturn is in the fourth house, the native leans toward through-time processing. These individuals internalize emotional discipline and caution early in life, learning to weigh comfort, belonging, and relational security across time. They may not rush into decisions. They reflect, assess, and move with guarded emotional commitment. If Saturn is in the 10th house, this long-range thinking becomes professionalized. They act with an awareness of public image, long-term success, and legacy. Every move is calculated not just for now, but for how it will look and feel down the line. If Rahu is in the first house, the experience becomes hyper in time. These natives crave excitement, impact, transformation. They want to be seen now, felt now, admired now. There's a hunger to experience life viscerally in the present, sometimes without considering consequence. If Rahu is in the 7th house, this urgency shifts to others. They may rush into relationships, become fixated on external feedback, or seek emotional fulfillment in the immediacy of attention, often overlooking long-term relational stability. If Jupiter is in the 4th house, the through-time experience is gentle, philosophical, and value-based. These individuals often live in connection to ancestry, emotional meaning, and spiritual continuity. They consider how their choices echo across generations or affect the emotional structure of their inner life. If Jupiter is in the 10th house, this orientation expands. They begin to live for legacy, for purpose, for what they're building not just for today, but for who they're becoming across time. Purva Phalguni's instinct is to revel in the now, to dance, to love, to create, to be adored in the present moment. But its power deepens when it learns to see time as art, when it moves not just for pleasure, but for permanence. Its evolution lies in blending the rapture of now with the wisdom of later, learning to cherish the moment without losing the thread of meaning that ties one moment to the next. When this happens, Purva Phalguni becomes not just a lover of life, but a designer of destiny. Have Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, primary interest motivation, people, activities, places, or things. Some individuals are driven by people, seeking connection, admiration, and emotional resonance. Others are moved by action, expression, and the thrill of engagement. For some, place holds power, environments that nurture identity, creativity, or memory. And for others, the material world, status, comfort, art, or luxury, is the main source of drive. Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, ruled by Venus and steeped in sensuality, artistry, and relational magnetism, is most often motivated by people and places. These natives crave emotional closeness, admiration, and shared experiences, but also the aesthetic and emotional tone of the environments they inhabit. Yet their true motivation often blends pleasure with performance, connection with self-expression. The emphasis depends on planetary placements, particularly in houses like the 1st, 3rd, 6th, and 10th, where identity, effort, and social role are shaped. If Moon is in the 1st house in Perva Falguni, the primary motivator is people, especially those who reflect emotional or romantic attention back to them. These individuals seek to be seen, appreciated, and emotionally mirrored. They thrive on admiration and emotional reciprocity, and often shape their behavior to attract harmony and affection. If Moon is in the 7th, the motivation deepens in partnership. They are drawn toward romantic or emotionally intense dynamics, needing closeness to feel truly alive, even if it risks emotional overdependence. If Mars is in the 3rd house, activities become the main motivator. These individuals crave creative movement, social performance, and action that allows them to lead, charm, or impress. There's a natural spark in how they speak, flirt, or compete. They are energized by doing, especially in a way that gets attention or affirmation. If Mars is in the 6th, that activity focus becomes more service-based. They're motivated to build, fix, or refine systems of beauty, health, or artistry, often using their drive to create something that others appreciate or enjoy. If Venus or Mercury is in the 4th house, places take priority. These natives are deeply influenced by the emotional tone of their home, workspace, or creative setting. Beauty, comfort, and emotional ambience matter. They may be motivated to curate or beautify their surroundings, not just to feel good, but because environment feeds their creativity. If Mercury or Venus is in the 10th, this motivation for place becomes external. They are drawn to roles, titles, or social settings that reflect their inner elegance and give them space to perform or shine. Prestige and public beauty become extensions of self-worth. If Saturn is in the sixth house, the motivator becomes things, but specifically systems and structures that allow for long-term growth. These individuals may be less showy, but they're still driven by mastery, responsibility, and personal control. They're motivated by the material world, but not to indulge. It's about what endures. If Rahu is in the 10th house, material motivation intensifies. They want status, influence, or the kind of success that sets them apart. There's a desire to be both loved and unshakable, even if it's pursued through unconventional or seductive means. Purva Phalguni's core motivation is often to feel loved, look beautiful, and leave an impression, not just emotionally, but artistically and socially. Their challenge is to not confuse admiration with self-worth or comfort with fulfillment. When aligned, their motivation becomes radiant. They create beauty, nurture connection, and shape experiences that uplift others. But when misaligned, they may chase attention without depth or glamour without grounding. Their power lies in knowing what truly nourishes them and pursuing it not just to be adored, but to feel whole.